Hey everyone, what's going on? It's Friday afternoon on 4 p.m. in Israel, which means around, what are we talking about, 9 a.m. in the United States of America. Anywhere else you're watching this from around the world, you just have to sync your time to those two times, since I'm just not very familiar with anywhere else. I'm just going to wait for a couple people to get on here and see who's coming in. We're going to be talking about, hey John, what's going on? Everyone feel free to say hello as you sign in. Let me know where you're signing in from. And I'll give you a call out. Alexander is here. How you doing? All right, so we're talking this week's Parshat, but before you get in, hey Chani, what's going on? We're going to be talking about Parshat Shmini, which is actually the original opening of the tabernacle, the Mishkan in the desert. Devorah Clark is here. How are you? And actually, it should have been a very, very happy and jubilous Parsha, because the truth of the matter is the first time they're opening up the tabernacle in the desert, and that is Elisa, what's going on? That is a tremendous connection between the nation of Israel and God. So this should be a very, very happy Parsha, but we see that Alexander's in the Negev. Woo, nice. California's in the house. Good morning, Elisa. So unfortunately, we see that this Parsha has several things in it which really don't make too much sense when we're talking about opening up the tabernacle. Before I get into that, let me just post what. Let me cancel that. Excuse my hand. Let me just post one thing here. Here we go. I want everybody to get involved with this right now. All right? Those of you who didn't see, just a couple of days ago, I was at the scene of one of the terror attacks here in Gush Etzion. Thank God nobody was hurt. Really, by the grace of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and of course the fast and accurate acts of the IDF. There was only one person who was lightly injured, and the IDF soldiers, I said 5 bullets. They took this terrorist out with 7 shots and destroyed them. Lior, ma kore? Hakpatza, מצחיק מאוד. In any case, I just put up a link, really simple thing that we're doing. It's a campaign where we basically allow soldiers to come into a coffee shop and eat and drink for free. And again, it's a small sign of appreciation. Person who does sponsor a full month or a week, whatever it is, we put up a sign there with the person's name. And then if people want, we actually Skype in with the soldiers, with the sponsors themselves. So anyone here who loves Israel and cares about the IDF, hit that link. You can donate anything from 1 cup of coffee to a full month if you'd like. But everyone should get involved. Okay, let's talk a little bit. The Parsha opens up on the 8th day, when they open the Mishkan, when they open the tabernacle for the first time. And again, the importance of the temple and of the tabernacle is just not the building itself, of course. The commandments within the Torah is that it must be, the temple must be in the place that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that God commands, and that, of course, is Jerusalem. So we're waiting for the third temple to be built in Jerusalem. Hey, Michael, hey, Alexander's here, who just signed in over here. Everyone feel free. Jeremy, what's going on? And of course, everyone who's here, feel free to invite your friends and family. Get a little something for the Shabbat tip about this Parsha. Loving all the likes. Thanks. Loving all the loves also. All right, so what happens? They open up this tabernacle, the Mishkan, and of course, like I said, the Mishkan and the Mikdash are actually there to give a straight line communication between Shabbat Shalom Adam, between the Jewish nation and HaKadosh Baruch Hu and God. It is really our straight line. It's our cell phone. It's our speed number, and our connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So it's a very, very joyous day. Imagine the day when we have that power, that straight communication, open for the first time, the grand opening. It's a tremendous day. And again, one would expect that this day is filled with joy and happiness and whatnot. And what happens in the end is exactly the opposite. Both of Aaron, HaKohen. So, Michael, those are asking about the grill. So I would make a joke and say I'm in solidarity with the hunger strike, but though that's not true. I think I need a sponsor for all my meat habits. But yeah, I just couldn't get to the marcola today. I apologize. But anyway, we'll talk about it a little bit later on. But in any case, we're talking about both of Aaron's sons, Nadav and Avihu, who were righteous people. And those people, you can't make them into a Russia. You can't make them, say they were evil people. Or even Amaretz, they didn't know things. They're Aaron and Cohen's children. So obviously they had knowledge and they knew, what had to be done, what wasn't allowed to be done. So, and they were Kohanim, right? It's Aaron's children were Kohanim. So they rushed into the Mishkan, into the tabernacle, into the Holy of Holies, and they went there to offer a sacrifice to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to God. Now, understand, in terms of their emotions and what they meant to do and their intentions were all beautiful. The intention, Aaron Cohen's sons, Nadav and Avihu, their intentions were beautiful. They really had a connection, and they wanted to say, hello or thank you to God, and there was nothing wrong about their intentions. And what happens to them is a fire comes down from the heavens and burns them to death. Again, the leader's two sons, the man who's in charge of the grand opening of the Mishkan, Aaron Cohen, Aaron the high priest, his two sons are killed directly by God. Now, today we say, where was God in the Holocaust, right? So, my grandmother used to say, where was man in the Holocaust? I say this all the time. God gave us, tools to live with in this world. The fact that you took those tools and made gas chambers, that's man's fault. Don't blame God on that. It's like a father giving a son or a daughter a car and giving them the warnings. You shouldn't do this and that, and you can't drink and drive, right? And the son or daughter doesn't listen. They crash and they kill someone, right? So you're going to blame, say, where was my father in the car crash? Your father gave you a car as a present, and he gave you the laws on how to use that in a way that's both safe and beneficial for everyone, and you pervert those laws, and then you turn to the person who gave you the present and say, where was God in the Holocaust? Where was man in the Holocaust? But when it comes to Aaron Cohen, his two sons were killed directly by God. There were no Nazis then. There were no enemies or Hamas or terrorists. They were killed by fire that came down from the heavens. They were killed directly by God. So now you have the man who's in charge of opening up the Mishkan. You have the man who's in charge of making that connection between the nation of Israel and God, Aaron Cohen, and his two sons out of some kind of spiritual excitement, right? Spiritual excitement, ran into the tabernacle to say, to make a connection with God, and then they're killed by fire. Now, was there anything wrong with Nadav and Avihu's intentions? No, their intentions were wonderful. So the sages, the Chazal, when we hear the word Chazal, for those who don't know, it's Chachamenu Zichronam Levracha. It's the sages of the Jewish people who wrote different explanations on the Torah in different texts. So Chazal write that there are many different reasons that they were killed. One is they say they went in drunk. Well, not really drunk. They had some wine that you were allowed to go in for. You weren't allowed to go in. They had some wine before they went in. Others say that they gave the Torah says they gave an esh zara. They gave a sacrifice that was not commanded to be given, right? But who cares about laws, right? Their intentions were good. You'll hear this often today, right? It doesn't. Who cares about laws and morality and boundaries? As long as the person feels, as long as they love each other. We hear that all day long, right and left. I think that Aaron Cohen, should have screamed out in pain and said, God, how could you? God, how could you? Their intentions were wonderful. They wanted to build a communication and a connection with a Kadosh Baruch Hu, with God. How could you kill them? And what is this going to do for the whole nation? What is the whole nation going to say? They were killed, my two sons. Aaron Cohen's two sons were killed by God Himself. What is the nation going to say? And I think that Aaron Cohen had there's a tradition in Israel on Holocaust Remembrance Day and of course Memorial Day for IDF soldiers that a siren goes off in Israel and everyone goes silent, stands up and holds a minute or 2 minutes of silence. And there are some who say that is a tradition of the non-Jews and therefore we're not going to keep it. But I disagree with them, not based on my opinion. I disagree with them from this week's Parsha. This week's Parsha, Vayidom Aaron. What does Aaron do in reaction to his sons being killed? By God, directly. He stands silent. Vayidom Aaron. Okay, Vayamod Dom means to stand at attention in modern Hebrew. He stood silent. And Rashi, one of the commentators on the Torah, and was the Talmud as well, he says that his standing dom, his standing silent, was not just standing silent. It was doing some kind of self cheshbon nefesh, to looking inside and saying, okay, well, what did I do wrong? And Rashi says because he accepted the ruling of God, therefore he was actually given the next speech. The next passage after this whole incident is that Kadosh Baruch Hu, God also speaks to Aaron and gives a law that you cannot go into the Mikdash, you cannot go into the Mishkan when you're drinking wine. And I think, and that's exactly the point. When people say again, if anyone has a right to ask where was God, it's certainly Aaron Cohen. Hey Jason, thanks. Send regards to New Jersey. It was certainly Aaron Cohen because God, with His own fire and fire from the heavens, killed his two sons. So he had the right to ask where was God when this happened. But he can't really ask that because God was the one who actually did that. He made that happen, fire. So when people ask, where was God in the Holocaust? I'll say it again. I said it 1,000 times. I think it's important to say. It's not where was God in the Holocaust. Where was man in the Holocaust? Where was man in the Holocaust? Where was the world? Where was the world? Where were the demonstrations? There were none. The world was silent. And the reason the world was silent was exactly because of the boundaries that were not defined. And what's interesting, if there's such a serious, discussion about Aaron's two sons, what is the Torah then coming to? I'm just looking at the Chumash Ma'ani. What does the Torah talk about next? The rules of food, the rules of kashrut, which animals are kosher, which animals are not kosher, right? You have split hooves and chuzitz cud, right? Those are the animals that are kosher, right? And then the Torah gives examples of animals which only have one of the two signs, right? And the one animal that it brings in that has split hooves and doesn't chew its cud is the pig. And, the question is, number one, why is this so important to tell? In other words, if we knew the animals that it mentions two signs. So any animals that don't have those two signs are not kosher. Why does the Torah then have to specify which animals only have one sign? What is the point? So the first group of animals, you have the shafan, you have the arnevet, you have the gamal, the camel. Those, they do chew their cud, but they don't have split hooves. And the only animal that has split hooves but does not chew its cud is the pig. And the Rashi on the spot says what is special about the pig. The pig walks around very proud, putting his hoofs forward and saying, look at me, I'm kosher. Right? Look at me, I'm kosher. Right? It puts its hooves split and it shows that split hooves. Internally, of course, it doesn't chew its cud. And Rashi writes right there that what is the definition of a pig in terms of Judaism? It's someone who flaunts his external, look at me, how holier than thou I am, and internally is empty. Not empty by accident because they can't connect with anything, but empty in terms of their thoughts and their thought processes. So I think that this is very important. Certainly in today's world, I think we're having a little problem with these definitions of morality. And the idea is people, they feel good about it. Well, I feel like it's okay. This is the way I feel that I'm connecting, so it's not up to us. I actually had this debate just a couple of days ago with someone about morality. They're a vegan, and they were very upset that during Passover we would give a sacrifice and we eat meat, and they're saying we're causing pain to everyone and it's a terrible thing, and they're getting all emotional. And I said, look, I understand your emotions, but what are they based on? What are your morals based on? And I said to this person, look, you believe that we are not allowed to eat meat. I believe we are allowed to eat meat. What are our opinions based on? I said to the other person, you do not believe in God. Your morals are based on your opinions, and that's fine. You can do it. You can think whatever you want. But the bottom line is that it's just based on your opinion. And since you don't believe there's a God in the world, and again, I'm not arguing yes or no. Since you don't believe there's a God in the world, there's really no base for objective morality. Every part of humanity will decide what is moral for their society, and therefore, the whole question where was God disappears because, right, if someone doesn't believe in God, then there's no God. So there's no question of where was God in the Holocaust. The real question to be asked is where was man in the Holocaust? That is a real question to be asked. Certainly with someone who's an atheist. So this person who's a vegan said to me, don't you understand the pain the animals are feeling? And don't you understand? And don't you understand? Don't you understand? I said, no, I don't, because I'm not a cow. And I said to them, look, I understand your opinion. What is your opinion based on beyond your own opinion? In other words, what do you base it on? Do you have some kind of objective law that says I'm not allowed to kill animals? So they, of course, got a little bit angry with me and said, I don't need a Bible to say you're not allowed to kill. I said, I didn't say you do need a Bible. I just want you to explain to me, according in your world, what are your morals based on? In other words, why can't one kill? Why can't one murder? Right? You're going to tell me that it's immoral? Define that for me. Of course, I agree that one cannot kill, but I know that in terms of moral level, not a sociological level, on a moral level, because the Torah says, Lo tirtzach, you cannot murder. That's the level of it. And that's where morality comes from. And again, as long as society, even if it's an atheist society, is parallel with the basic morals that Judaism believes in, everything's wonderful. So if you live in America, you can't kill, you can't steal, you can't kidnap, and so on and so forth. But the second society takes a sharp turn, right or left, and says either, when I mean to the right, is either you can beat up people you don't agree with, which obviously you can't do according to Judaism, or the left, everything's allowed. That's also a problem. But again, when someone gets angry with me and says, oh, you're a primitive and you're this and you're immoral, I just say to them, well, how do you define morality? So I think that the idea of food, the idea of kosher coming in this Parshat, when we're talking about death, we're talking about two of our own sons dying at the hand of God, literally. What is the point of bringing these details of kosher in? Because Emotions are very, very important when it comes to prayer, for example. Very important. But when making decisions in life, one has to be very careful not to allow their emotions to get in the way. We say that in Judaism, don't go after your heart and your eyes. Right? In other words, when you're doing something good and positive, or you're doing something meaningful, yeah, of course you get emotions involved, but the action defined as good is not defined because of what you're feeling, but rather it's defined as good because it's defined as good, and you should put your feelings into that action because it's good, not because I feel comfortable or okay with what I'm doing. And I think that basically differentiates, again, religious people whose personal comfort zones are not those are not what's leading us. My personal comfort is not what's leading us. I really want to taste a cheeseburger. I really do. And by the way, according to Judaism, you're not supposed to say that it's disgusting. Absolutely not. You're supposed to say it probably tastes very, very good, but I can't do it because it's defined as something that's wrong according to the Torah. So it's not about disgust. It's not like, shrimp is probably disgusting or pig is probably disgusting. No. That's not what it is. It's probably very good, but because my moral standards are defined by an objective source and not by my comfort, I therefore can't eat it. And I think that's the point of this week's Parsha. This week's Parsha is my Bar Mitzvah Parsha actually. And just to relate to a couple of things that are going on in the world, and I think that both in terms of the right and left, anybody who's not connected up to an objective source has a problem. In other words, those people talk about peace all the time and no war ever, and watches 600, 700,000 people get slaughtered in Syria, that's immorality. That's immoral. And somebody who, for example, interviews Marwan Barghouti, a terrorist who's sitting in Israeli jail on 5 counts of murder and over I don't know how many life sentences, and the New York Times puts them on the front page in a big spread, and to show you how emotional you have to be to these people, and forgets to mention what he did, that's immoral. And it doesn't matter how liberal, excuse me for saying the word liberal, how moral they think they are and how nice they think they are. Again, and by the way, I want to say something to everyone who's following me on Facebook and is always commenting. Do me a favor, don't make it personal. Don't ever attack someone on a personal level. It's not the way to win a debate, number one. And number two, there's really no reason to do that. Because we all have faults. Attack what they're saying. Show the facts. If you don't know the facts, then keep quiet, sit back and listen. It's very simple. We have the truth, and if you don't know how to talk the truth, can't explain the truth, then just sit back and watch and ask questions. Don't kick in with all kinds of name calling or profanity. It doesn't work, and it's not the way I work, so definitely don't do it on my page. Okay? When I'm trying to expose people's mistakes, let's call that, or ideologies which I disagree with, I don't say I just disagree, I show why I disagree with it. And that's very, very important. And the biggest issue I think that we have today is the fact that we're not speaking the truth. That we're not standing up and speaking the truth. And I say this every week, and I'm going to say it again and again and again. The fact that Israel's upholding a policy, for example, and yes, this is painful. To me, I don't know how many of you think about this. The fact that Israel's upholding a policy that does not allow Jews to pray on the Temple Mount. They're upholding, with no lack of better word, an anti-Semitic policy. Can you imagine any other country in the world say Jews can't pray here? In this synagogue, more, and forget to just pray here. It's an anti-Semitic policy, and it's a terrible policy. But if we're upholding such a policy, right, left, Netanyahu, left doesn't matter. If we're upholding that policy, all governments have been in government since that policy has been in action. If we're upholding such a policy, we cannot turn to the world and say, how dare you say Jerusalem is not ours? We're saying Jerusalem is not ours. And the problem is, unfortunately, we don't have people in leadership right now, real leadership, who will demand that and say, listen, I'm going to overthrow the government unless you stop this horrific anti-Semitic bigoted policy of not letting Jews to pray on the Temple Mount. It's horrific. And by the way, those of you who have not or are in Jerusalem, there are full neighborhoods in Jerusalem where Jews can't drive through. And they're under Israeli control because you'll get stoned and Molotov cocktails be thrown, and we're not taking control of those areas. I'm not even talking about the areas, in Ramallah or in Gaza or other places. Forget about that. And if we're going to come back to the conflict, the Israeli-Arab conflict, as you know, I don't think it's an Israeli-Arab conflict, and I don't think it's about a land conflict. I think it's a culture conflict, and this is very important to understand. If we're talking about Gaza, for example, Israel left Gaza in 2005, and when I say left, not only did we kick 10,000 Jews out of their homes and destroyed their livelihood there, we apologize about that. Zook, you got to get that fixed. We actually dug up Jewish dead. and took them out of the graves in Az and Gush Katif and moved them in other places into Israel. And when that happened, what happened as a result? Did the people, the Arabs there, build themselves an affluent society, an open society, a democratic society? No, they voted for Hamas, a genocidal, radical Islamic organization who has their mindset of destroying Israel, not because of land. So we have to learn the lesson. Take a look at Turkey. The moderate Islamic country has now voted to give Iran more dictatorship-like powers. So you have to realize that you're not dealing with a culture that is talking about, that is talking about any kind of like conflict, land or this and that. It's a culture problem. It's not a land problem. And therefore, no peace treaty should be talked about when you have a culture issue. When they decide that living is more important than destroying Israel, when they decide that living and giving their own people rights is more important than fighting or blowing themselves up or crashing their cars into people, then we'll talk. No problem. And again, there are people that Arab neighbors who live around my area who are not like that. And they're fine. And I don't need to be a peace deal with them because they're peaceful already. Anyways, that's about it. I want to leave you with two messages. Number one, I'm coming to the States hopefully next month on a speaking and a fundraising tour about Israel, the IDF, and for standing together. And I'm looking for people to help me set up venues in different areas around the United States. So I'm talking to you who's watching right now. If you want to sit somewhere in your area, please PM me right after this video and let me know. Number two, I'm going to put up the link again right here for one of the campaigns that we're doing, a simple sign of appreciation for soldiers who are constantly on guard. The men and women who took out the terrorists the other day very quickly and very accurately and stopped. By the way, it wasn't reported the terrorist who ran this car into the 60-year-old man yesterday had a huge butcher knife in his car, and so therefore you can imagine what would happen if if the soldiers would not have taken the terrorists out quickly. But here's a simple way to say thank you to those soldiers. What this is basically is that offers soldiers in uniform, frontline, active soldier uniform, to come into one of the coffee houses here, get themselves a piece of cake and a coffee, and just to enjoy it with a letter and with a message from people all around the world, you, everyone who's here, just to say thank you to them, show them appreciation. So hit that link. And finally, of course, everybody do share the video. Let's spread this information around. All right, thanks for watching. Suzanne here. Jennifer. By the way, Jennifer Morgenstern is here. Yona is here. She was one of the winners in the Israel Video Network contest with her video of a day in the life of an Israeli. Is there a trampoline outside? Yes, there is. That's my neighbor. We don't have one, although my kids have been begging me for one. But it's the neighbors who are constantly on the trampoline. It's very funny. You notice that. All right. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Thanks for watching. Don't forget, share the video and hit that link and join me as we say thank you to IDF soldiers. And of course, let me know if you want to set something up in your area when I'll be in the States next month. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Take care.